Overheard my wife's late-night call with her ex-fiancé. He still thinks he owns me. Let him keep thinking that. She laughed as they spent my bonus on a hotel weekend. The worst part? My boss was in on it too. 2 weeks later, I showed up at their office with champagne as the new CEO. He still thinks he owns me, she laughed. Let him keep thinking that. The money hit his account today. We'll use it for the weekend. At the peninsula? The man asked. Of course. Where else? She replied, without missing a beat. I stood in the hallway of our loft, just outside the study where she didn't think I could hear her. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. That call wasn't meant for me. The man she was talking to? Her ex-fiancé. The money? My annual bonus. And the cherry on top? She wasn't working alone. My boss, my mentor, was in on it too. What followed changed everything. We live, or used to live, in a condo just off North State Parkway in Chicago. Lake views, exposed brick, overpriced furniture we picked out together. It had the kind of charm people fake on social media. 5 years of marriage, 10 years of knowing each other, and I really thought we were happy. Or, maybe, I thought happiness was just quiet enough to not make waves. Her name is Callista. She's a freelance graphic designer, working mostly from home. Smart, sarcastic in a way that people find charming, and so good at reading people it felt like she was always 3 steps ahead. I met her at an art exhibit for a mutual friend. I made a dumb joke about modern sculpture. She laughed like it was original, and just like that, I was in. I'm Ruben. I work in marketing. Or, at the time, I was a senior director at a hospitality branding firm downtown. I'd been there for over a decade. Made my way up from an entry-level copywriter to one of the top people on the floor. We handled rebrands and identity strategy for major hotels, luxury chains, cruise lines, name it. I didn't notice when things started slipping, not really. That's how betrayal works, I guess. It never punches you in the face. It seeps into the cracks of your routine. I'd been pulling long hours at the time, prepping for a regional account pitch that, if successful, would mean not just a raise, but a real partnership. I was exhausted all the time, stressed, focused on work. So when Callista started being a little more aloof, a little less affectionate, I chalked it up to both of us being busy. That's what long-term couples do. You write off the weird energy, pretend like it'll pass. Then came the little things. Passwords changed, apps logged out, bank statements that didn't add up. She stopped asking about my day, and I stopped sharing. The emotional distance crept in like fog, so slow you don't realize it until you're lost in it. The night it all changed, I wasn't supposed to be home. I'd been at a dinner with a potential client, but it got canceled at the last minute. I didn't text her on the way back, partly because I wanted to surprise her with Thai food, partly because I didn't think I needed to warn my wife that I was coming home to my own apartment. The moment I stepped into the hallway and heard her voice, my stomach dropped. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the casual cruelty. That laugh. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't even nervous. She was speaking like she had nothing to hide. The man's voice on the other end of the call sounded smug, familiar in a way I couldn't quite place until she said, "You've always known me best, Alaric." That name. That was it. Alaric Preston. The ex-fiancé. The one she never talked about unless wine was involved. The one who left her the week before their wedding over some career opportunity in Manhattan. The same guy whose name she'd delete from her call log anytime it came up. They were talking like they never left off. The hotel booking? The Peninsula Chicago. A place we'd been to only once, for our anniversary 3 years ago. The money? She told me she was attending a creative retreat in Wisconsin with a few female designer friends. She even showed me a fake itinerary. And the part about the bonus? That stung most. Because just a week before, Pamela, my boss, the woman I looked up to, the one who'd guided me through every major promotion, told me she pulled some strings to get me a pre-approval bonus ahead of our next campaign. Said it was off the books, meant to reward my loyalty before the board could make it official. She'd made it sound like a gift, a sign of trust, but the deposit never showed up. She told me it had delays, blamed accounting. I hadn't thought to question it. After all, Pamela had always been solid. She'd mentored me, vouched for me when my work was passed over. I considered her a professional ally. Turns out, they were all connected. Alaric, Callista, Pamela. Each had a part to play. After overhearing the call, I didn't sleep that night. I didn't confront her, either. I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I thought, deeply and clearly. I stopped reacting and started observing. I began logging everything. Every phone call, every bank transfer, every time she said she was working late or out with clients. I requested transaction records from our bank, pulled archived statements from my email, even checked our shared cloud folder, which she forgot to unlink from her secret burner email. It didn't take long. She'd opened a sub-account under both our names, which I hadn't noticed because she routed the notifications to her personal email. The bonus was in that account, and the booking for the hotel had been charged to it. The worst part? A few days later, she told me over breakfast that she felt disconnected and needed time to recharge creatively. I nodded, told her I supported her. packed her bag for her fake retreat myself. While she was off with Alaric in a suite I'd once saved months to afford, I was talking to Barrington Global. They'd reached out to me a few weeks prior, asking if I'd be interested in leading an acquisition for a competitor firm. I ignored the message at first, but after everything I discovered, I followed up. One call led to another, and suddenly, I was in talks for a leadership role. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friends. I kept smiling at Pamela, taking her feedback, pitching her ideas she thought were hers. I sat in meetings and fed her lines she'd repeat back to me as her own. She thought she was grooming me to be her pawn. All the while, I was preparing to become her replacement. The day before the acquisition was finalized, I received one last piece of the puzzle, an audio recording from an anonymous HR rep who didn't like how Pamela was treating junior employees. The recording was from weeks earlier, where Pamela bragged to someone about keeping Ruben on a leash. Said she could snuff out his promotion if needed. I saved the file, burned a copy onto a flash drive. That was all I needed. I didn't sleep the night before it happened. I packed a box, printed out my new business cards, and bought a bottle of champagne. I didn't tell Callista I'd be gone that morning. She thought I was at another pitch rehearsal. And then I walked into the building I'd worked at for nearly a decade, took the express elevator to the executive floor, and waited for the staff meeting to begin. Pamela walked in with that confident, clipped smile she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. Callista followed 5 minutes later. I hadn't seen her since her retreat. She didn't look at me. That was fine, because they were about to see me. She didn't notice me right away. Neither did Pamela. That's the funny thing about people who think they're in control. They stop paying attention to the small things. The little signs that the room isn't playing along anymore. I stood near the back, letting them have their moment. Pamela started the meeting, clacking her acrylics against the conference table like a gavel. Before we dive into Q3 projections, she said, there's an important announcement coming from our partners. That was my cue. I walked forward slowly, setting the champagne down on the table like a card in a poker game. You could feel the shift in the room. Her voice caught mid-sentence. Callista turned her head. Her smile faltered. Pamela's brow furrowed. Sorry to interrupt, I said, evenly. I believe I'm the one making that announcement. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Pamela laughed, the kind of awkward, tight laugh people use when they think someone's telling a bad joke in a high-stakes room. Ruben, what is this? She asked, glancing toward one of the partners who had already taken a step back from her. You're early. We're not doing employee appreciation today. No, I said. We're not. I pulled a stack of folders from my briefcase and handed them to the executive assistant, sweet girl named Avery who'd always said good morning even when no one else did. Could you pass those out? They're copies of the merger documents, leadership transition memos, and audit reports. Pamela didn't take the file. Her hand hovered just over it like it might burn her. I'm sorry, she said, her voice thinner now. I'm the new CEO, Pamela, I said. Barrington Global closed the acquisition last night. The board voted this morning. Effective immediately, I'm assuming your position. HR will walk you through the next steps. Legal has a copy of the audit. You'll want to review it with counsel. Dead silence. Someone in the room coughed. She blinked. You don't have the authority. I do now, I said, and held up the signed contract from the Barrington deal. And I think we should talk about that offshore account linked to your expense reimbursements. But maybe not in front of everyone. Her face was drained of all colors. You could see the gears trying to turn behind her eyes, but there was no traction left. She glanced toward Callista, who still hadn't spoken. I finally turned to my wife. Ex-wife, in my mind. She looked like she'd swallowed glass. Her eyes kept darting from me to the champagne, then to the folders. She tried to smile, but the muscles in her face wouldn't cooperate. You knew, she whispered. I did, I replied quietly. And I gave you plenty of chances to be honest. But you kept playing. I didn't, don't, I said. Just don't. She bit her lip. That fake tearful look I'd seen once or twice before when things didn't go her way. Except this time, there was no audience left to clap for her. Just a room full of colleagues who now knew exactly what kind of woman she was. There was a pause long enough for a train to pass through it. I turned back to the staff. Apologies for the disruption, I said. Let's take a 10-minute break before we resume. Avery, can you help Pamela pack up her things? IT will be deactivating her access in the next hour. No one said a word, but a few people nodded, almost imperceptibly. Quiet, grateful nods. The kind you give when a tyrant is finally walked out of the palace. Pamela stood up slowly. Callista didn't. She looked stuck, like she wanted to scream or run or maybe just disappear into the table. I didn't care which. I stepped into my new office, the one Pamela used to occupy, shut the door, and finally, exhaled. I could still hear the muffled voices outside. Boxes being shuffled. The slow unraveling of their plan. Everything they thought they were building, undone in a single morning. The desk was cleaner than I expected. No photos. No plants. Just a mouse pad, a high-end monitor, and a drawer full of branded pens. I sat down, let the leather creak beneath me, and looked out across the city skyline. Funny thing, I used to think success means earning their respect. Now I know better. Success meant never needing their approval in the first place. The call started about 2 hours later. First from an unknown number, then from her, then blocked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. By mid-afternoon, she was standing in the lobby. Not hysterical. Not crying. That wasn't her style. No, Callista was too polished for that. She looked calm. Too calm. Wearing that tailored navy coat I bought her last Christmas, pretending like the world hadn't just collapsed around her. The receptionist buzzed up. "Is Mrs. Lang here to see you?" I didn't correct her. I just said, "Tell her I'm in a meeting." She waited 45 minutes before leaving. That night, I found my key fob disabled. She'd changed the locks on our condo. Her version of retaliation, I guess. Problem for her was, I'd already filed paperwork for separation and had the property records pulled. Everything was in my name. She had no legal claim to the condo. It was just another game she thought she could win. I booked a suite at the Waldorf that night. Ironic, considering what I'd learned she'd done with mine just days before. But I needed the quiet, the space, and the air felt different up there. Less polluted with lies. The next morning, I met with my legal team. Told them everything. Showed them the financial records, the emails, the call logs. Callista's voice saying, "Use his bonus like we planned," was crystal clear. My attorney, a calm but sharp guy named Reza, just nodded and said, "This is going to be straightforward." He wasn't wrong. What followed was weeks of paperwork. Bank accounts frozen. Access revoked. Discovery demands sent. Her lawyer, some boutique firm in River North, tried pushing for mediation. My response was simple: "We'll see you in court." In the meantime, I focused on my new role. The team was hesitant at first. I got it. One day they had Pamela barking orders and protecting a tight-knit clique, and the next day I was sitting at her desk with a different plan and a different tone. But over time, people adjusted. They saw the changes. No more shouting matches in meetings. No more favoritism. The quiet ones spoke more. The ones with actual talent rose fast. The office culture shifted. But outside of work, my life was quiet. The kind of quiet that hums just beneath the skin. I wasn't angry all the time, just alert. Sharper. Every time I thought about the call, about her laughing at me with him, I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt something colder. Like a gate closing. Then came the email. Subject, "Please." No greeting. No sign-off. Just one line. "Can we talk? Just once in person? I need you to hear me." I didn't reply. A few days later, I got a voicemail. Same number. Her voice was tight, restrained, trying to sound composed. "Ruben, I don't know where to start. I know what I did was wrong. I know you hate me, but you don't understand the whole story. It wasn't just what it looked like. Please don't do this through lawyers. Please." The thing is, I did understand the whole story. She made it very easy. She thought she could live two lives. One where she played the supportive wife, and another where she plotted in the shadows, counting dollars I earned, leveraging my trust. And when the ground started crumbling beneath her, she did what manipulators always do, spun a new version. One where she's the victim of her own mistake. But I wasn't the same Ruben anymore. This version of me didn't chase explanations. He didn't need closure. He didn't need to sit across from the woman who gutted his life and ask, why? Instead, I forwarded the email to Reza. He added it to the file. At work, I made small changes. Restructured the bonus process to include board transparency. Reassigned teams so no one had to report to a friend of a friend. Removed every layer of favoritism Pamela left behind. People started smiling in the halls. Staying later, but not because they were forced to. Because they wanted to. And me? I started sleeping again. Real sleep. Not the kind where you crash into unconsciousness from emotional fatigue, but the kind where your shoulders soften and you wake up without dread. Then, a month into the chaos, I saw her again. In person. It was a fluke. I was grabbing lunch with a vendor on Michigan Avenue. We'd just wrapped up and were walking out of the Dearborn when I saw her, Callista, sitting alone at an outdoor table at a cafe nearby. Hair pulled back, sunglasses on, stirring a drink that looked untouched. For a moment, our eyes met. She stood up, hesitated, then stepped forward. Just one step. Not enough to approach, just enough to be seen. I nodded once and walked away. There was nothing left to say. Over the weeks that followed, her presence began to shrink from my life in visible increments. The lawyer handled communication. I signed papers. She contested a few things, tried to argue for half of the condo's equity, despite never having contributed to the mortgage. Reza made quick work of it. When the facts are clean, so is the outcome. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. That was never my goal. But I wasn't going to let her keep anything she hadn't earned. The only time I even mentioned her name aloud was during a quiet dinner with my sister, Nora, who came in from Milwaukee to check on me. "Does she ever try to apologize?" she asked over a bottle of red at a quiet place in Lincoln Square. I nodded. In her way. What does that mean? It means she's sorry she got caught. Not that she did it. Nora didn't respond right away. Just poured more wine and said, "At least she can't twist this one into being your fault." That hit harder than I expected, because it made me realize something I hadn't fully processed. For years, Callista had a way of making me feel like I was always just a little bit wrong. Not outright, not aggressively, but with little comments. A shift in tone, a raised brow, a sigh when I got home late, even though she knew I was working overtime for us. She planted seeds, and I watered them, thinking I was being a better husband. That's what really broke me when I found out. Not just the betrayal, but the fact that I trusted her with my blind spots. And she aimed for them when she struck. A few days later, I got a text from someone I didn't expect. Pamela. I'd had her number blocked, but she used a new one. The message was brief. For what it's worth, I regret how things played out. I was wrong to trust her and to underestimate you. I read it twice. Then again, there was no point replying. But her words echoed in my head the next morning when I walked into her old office, the one I now called mine, and saw her nameplate still tucked in the back drawer, behind a folder of budget proposals and a branded paperweight. She underestimated me. They all did. It's strange how easily people mistake silence for weakness. How being methodical, measured, reserved, somehow translates into being easy to manipulate. I'd always kept my cards close. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I respected privacy, strategy, emotional discipline. And when everything fell apart, that discipline became my edge. I didn't scream. I didn't lash out. I observed. I documented. I planned. And then, I took everything back, quietly, efficiently, and with finality. Still, some days I wondered what their version of the story sounded like. Did Callista tell people I was cold? That I never saw her, or didn't try? Did she say I was married to my job? That the affair was a mistake born of loneliness? I would never know. And I didn't need to. Because every time I thought about that phone call, about her laughter while she spent money I'd bled for, I remembered exactly who she was when no one was watching. And that made it easy to keep moving. One night, maybe 2 months after it all exploded, I ran into Alaric. Not planned. Not expected. I was grabbing a drink with a former colleague at a bar on the rooftop of the London house. The air was crisp, the view pure magic over the river. I was walking back from the restroom when I spotted him near the elevator bank. Alone, leaning against the glass railing, drink in hand, looking out like he belonged there. He didn't see me at first, but when he did, he gave a small nod, like we were old classmates or something. I should have walked past him, but I didn't. I stopped, faced him, and for a few seconds, we just stood there, silent. Then he said, "You handled it well. Better than I expected." I didn't respond. He turned his head. "She said you wouldn't find out. Said you were too busy to notice anything." Guess that was her mistake. "No," I said quietly. "Her mistake was thinking you were an upgrade." He blinked. That landed harder than I thought it would. His jaw tightened. He tried to laugh it off, but it didn't stick. "I didn't plan any of it," he muttered. "Neither did I," I replied. "But here we are." He didn't say anything after that. Just looked back out at the city. I walked away. Didn't look back. I never saw him again. And truthfully, I didn't care to. The final court date came and went quietly. No fireworks. No long speeches. Just a judge, 2 attorneys, and a few notarized documents that, once stamped, finalized the legal unraveling of our life together. Callista didn't show up in person. Her attorney said she was emotionally unable to attend. I figured that meant she didn't want to look me in the eye again, and that was fine. I didn't need her there. The condo? Mine. The joint account she tried to funnel my bonus through? Frozen, audited, and split cleanly, after subtracting her unauthorized charges. Alaric's name had appeared on one of those hotel invoices, and Reza made sure it factored into the financial misappropriation angle. Her retreat cost her more than just a weekend away. The most satisfying part? She walked away with less than what she came into the marriage with. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped being the woman I fell in love with. Or maybe she'd never been that woman to begin with. Just someone who wore the role like a well-cut dress until it no longer served her. I didn't celebrate. No champagne this time. No parties. I went home, cooked dinner, opened a bottle of Merlot, and sat by the window, watching the lights of the city blink in a quiet rhythm. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. The story started making the rounds. Not the messy details, but the headlines that people loved. New CEO replaces scandal-plagued executive after quiet takeover. Colleagues reached out. Some apologized for not seeing it sooner. Others congratulated me, cautiously, like they weren't sure how close they could stand without stepping on glass. And then there were the messages. Not from Callista. She stopped reaching out after her attorney sent one last Hail Mary settlement offer, which we ignored. But from Pamela. Another email. This one longer. "You may not believe me, but I've spent the last few weeks thinking about what happened. About how blind I was. About how I enabled something toxic because it benefited me professionally. I thought I was smarter than everyone else. I wasn't. You proved that. I deserve to lose everything. I just hope you don't lose your ability to trust because of it. Good luck, Ruben. You earned this. Fair and square." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some things are better left unanswered. Months passed. The office transformed. The toxic residue from Pamela's tenure had mostly been scrubbed clean. Promotions were merit-based. Feedback was two-way. The team respected each other again. There was laughter in the break room. People stayed late because they wanted to, not because they were afraid not to. One Thursday evening, just as I was packing up, Avery knocked on my door. "There's a package for you," she said. No sender info. It was a sleek box, matte black, tied with a simple silver ribbon. Inside was a single bottle of champagne. Veuve Clicquot. No note. Just the bottle. A quiet smirk crept across my face. I set it on the corner of the desk, next to a framed photo of Lake Michigan I'd taken last fall. I never opened the bottle. I didn't need to, because I'd already celebrated in the best way possible by surviving their storm and walking out dry. I rebuilt the life they tried to burn. Not with rage, not with revenge dripping in cruelty, but with strategy, patience, and truth. They played checkers. I played chess. And when the last move was made, I didn't just win. I walked away with the whole board.